Hey Book Dragons, I'm back to do my part 1 of my April reading wrap up. I was able to finish 10 things again, sort of like last month. It's been a lot of ERCs and ebooks and audiobooks just because that's the blog tours I've been getting on and they have not sent me physical books. So let's get into the wrap up. It says I've read 11 books, but I feel like that might be wrong. Maybe I added one. Oh, you know what? I added my DNF. That's why. So I've technically read 10 books, but I DNF'd one. I read 3,565 pages about. My average page a day was 118. My average page count of books was 324. My most read genre is YA fantasy, which again, I'm very happy about. I read 4 books with rep, 8 books from authors I've read before. I had 2 5 stars, 2 4.5 stars, 2 4 stars, 2 3.5 stars, 1 3 star. So pretty good rating wise. And then nothing below that, pretty much. I read 5 new releases, 5 backlist, and 1 from last year. I read 2 physical, 5 audiobook, and 3 ebook. So that's pretty good. My camera's about to die. So, and then I started 1 series. I continued 2, and I completed 1. And I read 6 standalone, which is really nice. Some of those might change. Like I looked on, they didn't see that there was a sequel, but there might be. I read 1 arc, 0 from Audible. 0 from KU, 4 from the library, 3 from NetGalley, and 1 owned, and I don't have a script. I read 2 YA contemporary, 1 thriller, 3 YA fantasy, 3 historical romance, and 1 nonfiction. And yeah, so let's get in. I'm gonna go change my bag. Let's get into it. Again, I started off the month reading a lot of EARCs, and it also is Magical Readathon and Aurelium, so pretty much everything counts for Magical Readathon in some way, shape, or form, but my goal is to read a lot of fantasy so I can defend more, because I know that fantasy is a team that everyone wants to take down because they don't want us to win because we have the biggest team. And Magical Readathon, when the books pop up that I've read for those prompts, I will try to remember if I can. So the first book I read was a 5-star read, and it was Not Here to Stay But Friends by Caitlin Hill. Here is a photo. This is the second book by this author, and I really enjoyed it. I think this book worked a lot better for me than book 1 in the series, but this is like a friends to more romance, and it follows these 2 characters. I'm a bad with names, I apologize. And the girl kind of goes to visit her best friend. Her best friend moved to California, and his dad is running like a bachelorette type style show for kids. It kind of reminds me of like Moolah Beach when I was younger, but basically like Bachelor. And they need like a last minute contestant, so she kind of goes on to be a contestant, but her and her best friend might be endgame by the end of it. And it's really, really fun. I hate Bachelor TV shows, but this book really worked for me. And I think what worked for me more than her first book, Love from Scratch, that was like Enemies to More. I didn't really buy the Enemies, but I did buy the Friends to More, and I really enjoyed it. I love the Hollywood-esque setting. I just thought it was really, really fun. The end of the book was really surprising and really, really enjoyable. So I gave this book 5 stars. I really liked it, and I would definitely pick it up if you also like Second Chance and Friends to More, because I love that trope and I don't read it nearly enough. It's just I don't think it's as popular. So this one really worked for me, and I gave it 5 stars. And the next book are all from blog tours. Most of these are all from TBR and Beyond. And the next book I picked up, which was one that I do have a physical arc for, which is so nice because the publisher just sent it to me, is Prompt Poison by Rochelle Garrett. I struggled with this book a little bit. I think I gave it like 3.75 stars. I rounded it up to 4 on Goodreads. I enjoyed it. The book just bored me a little bit. I'll be a little bit honest. But basically you follow this main character named Autumn, and she's been waitlisted for her dream school, so they have like 6 weeks to kind of do a project, and she winds up doing like a promposal business where like she charges people to come up with the best promposals. It was fun. I just don't think the book worked for me as much, and I think it very much was like a slice of life novel. There was a romance in here, but it just wasn't, it didn't like wow me. I didn't want to keep reading it. So I only gave it like 3.5 stars for review, but I enjoyed it. It was fun. If you're looking for one that has kind of like, definitely diversity was present and accounted for, which I really enjoyed. I think the writing style, as you'll see it for a couple books, this thing just didn't work for me. It was a bit like slower paced. And I think this month I've been really craving fast paced books that I want to speed through. And this just wasn't it. But I liked it. I would definitely read more by this author in the future, and it was definitely a nice book kind of looking at the end of high school and when things don't go according to plan and problem solving, and so it was fun. I gave it 3 stars. It just wasn't a new favorite, and this will probably go on Pango soon, so keep an eye out on my account. And then the next book that I picked up was another audiobook that was kind of, I just picked up on a random, but I enjoyed it, and that is The Villa by Rachel Hawkins, and I'll put a photo here. I read The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins and really didn't like it. I thought the characters were really unlikable, and that's something I really struggle with in thrillers. I also read I read a lot of her YA books, and I really like those, and I also read this stuff by Erin Sterling, like her Witch Hex series, which I have liked. This book worked better for me, and it's set in Italy, and ironically I'm going to Italy in August, so I'm really excited for that. But this one follows two best friends. One is like a cozy mystery author, and then the other is like a self-help guru, and they're both in like, you know, interesting spots in their lives. So they decide go to a villa in Italy so they can write, and they sort of get sucked up in the villa's history where a murder has occurred, and things kind of go from there. It was a fast-paced read. Like, I didn't want to put the story down. I didn't hate the characters, which I like. I have Reckless Girls. I want to read it, but again, I've heard rumors that there's really unlikable characters, and I really struggle with that in thrillers. But I gave it like 4 stars. It was a fun read. I definitely like listening to it. I will admit, I definitely liked the present storyline more than the past storyline. The ending was really surprising though, so I would give it like 3.75 stars. I probably rounded up to 4 on Goodreads, but I liked it. It was fun. The audiobook was definitely a good experience. I definitely cared more about the present stuff than the past stuff, but alas, you know, that always happens when you have dual timelines. Sometimes the books, you like one timeline more than the other, and that definitely happened with me for this book. Sorry, I'm looking down at my computer so I can remember what order I read these books, because a lot of these I read in like orders that I don't really remember. Oh, and then the next book I picked up was another arc that I've actually really was excited for. I've actually been following Amy Kaufman and Kate MJ Armstrong's podcast for a while, and they talked about A Hunger of Thorns by Lily Wilkinson like a year ago. So when I saw that TBR and Beyond was having like a blog tour, I got on it really quick, and I like this book. I gave it like 4.5 stars, but here is another photo because I don't have a physical copy of this. I might get one because I really enjoyed it. But let's get into my review. So this is a book that it's very fairy tale-esque, but you follow this main character named Maud, I think, and she lives in this magical society, and she's a witch, but she doesn't have any magic anymore, and her mom was like an anarchist, like a terrorist, and her best friend goes missing, and she kind of gets sucked along to try to find her. And this book changes a lot. This is one of those books that kind of like changes the plot a lot of way through, but she's basically going on a quest to try to save her best friend, and it becomes like a quest story with people working with her, and she has to save her best friend, who there might be more to her and her best friend's relationship. It gave me vibes. I can't think of the book title, but like it was interesting. I thought the world was very magical and very filled with magic. I thought all the characters in the story were fun. It was a very slow read, I will say that. But it was something that like I really enjoyed. Like I really liked it, and it was a really interesting writing style. I think we're gonna get a book 2 in this series, which I will definitely be picking up, but it was definitely like a unique read. Very fairy tale-esque, and I really liked it, and I gave it 4.75 stars. And then the next book I picked up was a historical, and that is Married by Morning by Lisa Kleypas. This is the 3rd book, or no, maybe it's I think it's the 4th book in the Hathaway series, but here is a photo. Everyone has been telling me that I have to finish this series because the first 3 books are okay and the last 2 books are really good, and I would agree. So this book series, I think it was very Bridgerton-esque because you follow like all the siblings and you see the siblings again. I just think the Julia Quinn series worked for me a little bit more, but this one follows Leo, the older brother, who had a really traumatic life before this series. His girlfriend or his fiance died in the Black Plague, and he's kind of dealing with that. He drinks a lot, and then he winds up, this is the relationship between him and their governess, and I really liked it. There was definitely a little bit of mystery suspense at the end that kept me going. I like that you got to see all the other characters. This is my 4th. I would give this book 4 stars. It was probably my 2nd favorite in the series. My next one will be the next one that I read, just because I wanted to wrap up the series. But I enjoyed it. I definitely think that the later books in the series work a little bit better as well. I know that the first couple of books did have like gypsy rap, and I think people struggled with that. I know I did. But yeah, I really liked it. So that is why I gave this book 4 stars. And the next book I'm going to talk about is another e-arc that I read, but it wasn't like for a blog tour. I just had to read it because I just recently got a new iPad, and some of your NetGalley books you could only read on the NetGalley app, and I've really just need to get an iPad. So I got myself an iPad to read it because reading on my phone was not helping. But this is Something Close to Magic by Emma Mills, and this is her first foray into YA fantasy, and I really liked it. So let's look at the cover, and then we'll chat about the book. This book was Emma Mills' debut. It comes out in June, and this one was really good as well. Sort of like when I read Hunger of Thorns. It's very fairy tale-esque, but you follow this baker that is a seeker, which means she could find people, and a bounty hunter comes in and they kind of team up to find her, and they kind of get enamored with a prince. Again, this whole book worked for me so well. The one thing I will say about this book is that the world building wasn't as strong. I think the world building was probably its weakest point, but it definitely gave me like Once Upon a Time vibes, and I literally just read a book about like a grumpy girl and like a very sunshiny prince, which is I Love the Gods by Amy Kaufman, and this just worked for me a lot. I thought the characters were fun. I thought the world was fun. I think the world could have expanded a bit, which is why it's only like a 4.5, but other than that, I really enjoyed it. I think it's a standalone, but I would definitely read more by this author. I felt like her last couple of contemporary books kind of started to feel the same, so I like that she kind of made a change, but I think in future maybe she'll be able to expand her world and kind of expand it. It was definitely more a light-hearted fantasy, not as cutthroat intense like I Love the Gods, but I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4.5 stars and think you should definitely check it out this June. I think it would be a great summer fantasy because it is very, very light. It has to do with baking. It was just a fun read. So that's my thoughts on that one. And then the next book that I wrapped up was Love in the Afternoon, which is the Final Hathaway book. So here is a photo of that, and then let's chat about it. This is definitely my favorite book in the whole series, like by far. It basically follows Beatrix, who's the youngest, and she's obsessed with animals, and you follow Christopher. And Christopher is away at war, and her best friend, Poppy, I think, decides that she doesn't want to write to this guy anymore, so Beatrix starts writing to him. And this Christopher, like, these letters are like his safety line. And when he comes back, he starts to realize that maybe Poppy isn't writing to him, and maybe it is Beatrix, and things kind of go from there. This is definitely my favorite book in the series because everyone is really protective of Beatrice, and Beatrice is like a very like unique character. She's very obsessed with animals, and she's very, very sciencey and very, very analytical, which is not for ladies of her time. I really liked it. I gave it like 5 stars. It was definitely my favorite of the whole series, and I definitely think Beatrix's book was my favorite. So yeah, that is how I wrapped up that series. That's one of the only series I finished reading this month. I'm trying to get better at that. But yeah, and then the next book that I wrapped up was Dreams Lie Beneath by Rebecca Ross. This is a book that is on my 5-star read prediction. I don't think it's going to be a 5-star read. I think it's probably going to be like a 4-star read. But this is about a main character named Clementine, and she and her dad are dream wardens. And what happened was many, many years ago, there was a overthrow where the king was killed, and since that happened, no one can dream. Or when they do dream, their dreams kind of come out into the world, and their dream wardens to kind of protect it. At the start of this book, Clem and her father, their territory is kind of taken over by a new dream warden, and Clem is out for revenge. And this was a really interesting read. It's definitely a standalone, so if you're looking for a standalone story, I love books about dreams. It's ironic because this year I was a part of the Mindwalker thing for Aurelium, and this was a book that I counted for that. This was for the prompt, read a book that the same color of your shirt. When I was reading it, I had a cover the same color as this. But I really liked it. I think it was fun. I think it was definitely more of a romantic fantasy. Like there was a very, very strong romantic plot. Hate to more, which again, you heard me say, I only like that trope in fantasy because I think the stakes are really, really high. But I enjoyed it. I thought the characters were really, really fun. And I found it to be an enjoyable read. Like I really did. Again, I think the world building could have used a bit more work, but the characters worked for me, the world worked for me, and I would love to see more books set in this world. But yeah, it was a fun read. So I'm going to talk about my DNF, and that is Rivera by Lion Rosella. I'm so upset I didn't love this book. This is supposed to be another book for Aurelium where it was like a certain page count, but I read like 5 after this that all worked for it. So, but it just didn't work for me. And I don't know. I just felt like the pacing was a bit weird, and it was a very, very clunky writing style, and it didn't work for me. So I went up DNFing it. I might pick it up one day as like an audiobook just to see if that helps, but it didn't work. And then the next book that I read was The Light That We Carry by Michelle Obama. I just enjoyed this book. Here's the photo. This was less autobiography and more self-help, but I just love her her, like reading about her life and seeing her point of views and stuff, and it was very, very entertaining and just enjoyable. She's just, I feel like she's like an older sister talking to you about life, and it just was really, really great. I don't really rate nonfiction. I love the audiobook. She reads it to you, and I have been getting better at doing my nonfiction read every month. So this one was one for, I think this was for February and March, because I'm always like 1 month behind. February I didn't read any. But yeah, I really liked it. And if you liked Becoming and you wanted her to kind of dive into more life topics that wasn't about her life, this might be the book for you, because she does like do anecdotes and give you advice, and she always says like, I am not like a professional, but I just thought her take was interesting. And then the last book that I finished was The Ballet Who Loved Me by Valerie Bowman. Here's a photo. This was a book that I've been waiting a long time to read. So this is like the Footman and I series, and this is about they start with three characters that they go to a party and they kind of decide they're going to be servants to see what girls are nicer, and it goes from there. And this one definitely had more of a spy element, and it's a relationship between the valet and the maid, and it was very, very more spy crap than I was expecting. Like, I really, really like this one. The first half I didn't love as much, but the second half I really did like. I want to read the last book in the original series, which is like the prequel novella that I want to read, and then I think I'm going to call this series done because it's fun. I think that this series just worked for me because I like that trope, but I gave it like 4 stars and it was a fun read. So let me know in the comments what are some of your favorite books you read this month. But right now I would definitely say A Hunger of Thorn and Something Close to Magic were my 2 favorites. And my favorite audiobook was definitely Love in the Afternoon. So I hope that you guys are having a great day. Tell me in the comments what are some books you read in the first half of April. I would love to know, and I'll talk to you guys soon for my next video. Bye, Book Dragons.